Hello, I'm Johann. This is Maurizio today with you, Mimi. Today we want to
Hey
talk
guys.
about a topic which is a little counterintuitive, which is work less, achieve more. Um, some of you might know my background. I have been working part-time for the last 5, 6 years, or some years I didn't even work at all. And today we want to talk together, and this is a collaboration of Maurizio and me, of why for some situations, again, this is an opinion piece, this is not a final truth. For some situations, it might make actually sense, financial, but also from job security, to work less and therefore achieve more. And this, let me get started. I was at a business school, and I also was reading these videos. I also was told by my parents, hard work is the key to success. And we all know this community legend. I mean, Gaurav, Jitendra, Amit, yeah, they work 60 hours a week. They are CTOs. They get like 25 certs in 5 years. They do community work. They must have been working 100 hours a week. You know what? And they are super successful. We all heard the stories of Elon Musk sleeping in his factory floor. But I personally, I just can't do that. And even if I work hard, like my 40, 50 hours a week, even if I did that, and I did that in the first couple of years of my career, I didn't have success. The success just didn't come to me. No matter how hard I worked, the only thing I got out of it was a burnout. Maybe it's not true that hard work is the key to success. And this leads me to my next slide. On the left side, we have a ranking from stolen from Wikipedia, of course, of countries ranked by working hours per year. So Cambodia is at the top with 2,500 working hours per year. It goes down to Thailand of still more than 2,000 working hours per year. On the right side, you have a list of the richest countries per capita per GDP in the world. Monaco at the top, Liechtenstein, these are the random ones, but there's Switzerland, Ireland, Norway, Iceland. There is no overlap between the two. The only overlap is Singapore. So apparently, hard work does not mean more money. It's not the same. There is something which is different. And what's different? This is what we're going to talk about today. But first, who are we?
Yeah, so again, my name is Maurizio Joffre. I work at Montreal Associates right now. So we're a global staffing agency for IT within specific niche verticals. I help lead our Salesforce global practice. This is Johann. For those of you who don't know him, I mean, you might be living under a rock if you're in the Salesforce ecosystem, but newly achieved CTA. He worked at Audi Bene before where he is now doing his consulting. Audi Bene is a company that, you know, both of us know quite well, and where he was able to gain that first part of his permanent experience before he went on to what he did to get his CTA, and of course where he is now doing the consulting. And that path is almost the case study that we're going to use in this talk, as far as maybe taking a different approach to what people might normally think would bring them success over, their career lifetime. Perfect. So we're going to go through here just a few, career myths that I think relate to Salesforce quite well. If you're in another area of IT, it also actually could, some of these at least could relate to you pretty well as well. So I think in general, across IT, across any market, it's pretty common that people job hop every year, every couple of years. They get an offer, whether it's from a company or a headhunter, they get some more money, a job that seems a little bit better, maybe a nicer title, and they move. And that's kind of led to the myth that at the end of the day, you got to continue to make that job jump to get to, where you want to be. The truth is that at the end of the day, job hopping really only gets you so far, right? Sometimes actually sticking where you're at, planting your roots, and really, taking that opportunity to its fullest before you move on could be a long run way to get you what you want. If I work hard, I will get a pay raise. This one makes me laugh a ton because, like, I mean, at the end of the day, if that was true, I think a lot of more of us would get raises than we get now. But you could say, yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get 100%. But working hard doesn't necessarily mean you'll get that pay raise, right? The hard work that you do, oftentimes, unless you're somebody who is comfortable asking for that raise every, however increment you want to go, which a lot of people, unfortunately aren't. The hard work, instead of necessarily getting honored, oftentimes, I don't want to say oftentimes, but a lot of the time can get taken advantage of, right? When they see someone putting in all those extra hours, Instead of thinking, oh, we can give this person a raise, oftentimes companies will just give them more work. And that person being the type of worker who wants to work hard, who wants to show that they're giving it their all, will take that work and they stay even later. So that's not necessarily true. As much as I would love to tell you, it is unfortunately not. Experience is the most important thing. This is something I see debated so much on LinkedIn. I debate with candidates, even when we're talking about, I'm giving them a call for an opportunity and we end up getting to the certification, the experience part, and we're always passing, I would say, back and forth between what they think and what's actually true. At the end of the day, in general, yes, your project experience, core delivered projects are something that's always it's going to be the most quantifiable to a company who wants to maybe do the same thing that you've done in a previous project. 100% not taking anything away from this, but going on to this next point with the certifications having no value, everybody always uses the dumps anyway. Being in Salesforce, you're in an ecosystem, right? You're in a space that puts tremendous stress on continued education. Right? This is not somebody who worked in the Salesforce ecosystem who decided to come up with certifications. This comes from the top down. This is global. These are ways to quantify to some degree areas that you at the very least have an interest in doing more on project experience with. There has to be a balance between the projects you've delivered and the certifications that you've gotten. And the more that you can keep consistent with gaining experience, but also getting the certifications, long run, even short run, you're going to maximize opportunity for yourself. And this is, again, a big part of what we're going to be talking about today. So at the end of the day, what do we want, right? I think this kind of goes with everybody. They want to maximize the income they make. They don't want to have to worry about having to find a new job. They don't want to have to worry about, losing their job. Let's assume, again, you're not going forward and you want any management responsibilities. You don't necessarily want to be a team lead or a director or an executive or anything like that. You want to be somebody who's consistently working as a consultant or an architect, admin, proceeding through, and a max of 42 hours per week mixed in with work and study.
Maurizio, maybe we can walk us through the two concepts we're going to talk about today.
Sure.
High level.
Yeah. So the traditional concept, right? Working very hard, not studying too much. Studying 2 hours per week. So we'll keep this to release notes, trailhead, certifications, and some studying on the job, but predominantly working 40 hours a week. Okay. Now the alternative concept, and this is something that I think, again, Johann can dive deep into on his path and where he went, but this is the study hard concept ultimately. So in your first 1 to 5 years, you're studying 14 hours per week and you're working on top of that 28 hours per week, as opposed to that 40-hour work week that we mentioned. In your 6th year, this is where, technically you're not actually working. You're fully dedicated to studying for that CTA. And in years 7 to 12, you would be putting in full-time hours, ideally doing that 40 hours per week once you've gotten to this point.
And this brings me now to the comparison. So as Maurizio said, I did exactly that. This is basically my personal case study. And for the first 8 to 9 years, I actually make less money than somebody who just worked hard all the time. The numbers here can be found in the appendix. We did together, we looked at the numbers. They are all based on German in-house salary. And on the left side, you see the cumulative income. So the income added up over time. And on the bottom, you can see the years. And the green line is the study hard concept. The blue line is the work hard concept. As you see, work hard, you just make money steadily when it increases to after 12 years to about something like 800,000 euro altogether. The CTA route takes longer to catch up, but starting from near year 9, you actually start to make more money over your lifetime. And in year 12, you already have a difference of more than 200,000 euros. So yes, you first have to invest a lot of money. You have to sacrifice something, but this is something which every business guy does anyway. You invest in yourself instead of the stock market, instead of a flat, instead of gold or a golden watch or some car, whatever you invest alternatively, you invest in yourself. And then over the long run, it pays off. This is something we could calculate, we could based on our numbers. And
One thing I want to add to that quickly, if I could, Johan, on this slide, like again, right, this isn't going to be exactly the same for every single person who take these paths. Obviously, numbers can be different, but what we're trying to outline here is like, look, at the end of the day, right, if you look at this blue line of where it goes, being at the place you would be at in your career on that line, you could be, again, at a similar place as a CTA in, say, 8 years, as an example, but you're going to be doing whatever that job would be as a CTA. So in a game where certifications matter almost, if not just as much as the experience that you have, in a way, because of the ecosystem that you're in, right? It's almost just getting to that point, that tipping point, right? If we're talking CTA in that case, quicker to accelerate your career further from that point on, right? The numbers can vary, but at the end of the day, this is the trajectory that you're going to be looking at.
So I think just nice point of kind of you try to get to CTA as quickly as possible. Yes, you can spread it out over 10, 12, 14 years, but this way, on the long run, you lose out on a lot of money. And as Maurizio, I think you put it really nicely. Since you want to have this balance of work and study, there's no point in just going for the CTA like without any experience. So you have to get the work experience. This is where the 28 hours a week get in. But on top of that, you need to also get the study experience, which is hard to get while you work full time. At least for me, I'm tired at the evening. I can't study every weekend. I have a family, I have life, I have friends, I have hobbies, I have Netflix. There is something where I need to relax. And
yeah,
this is somehow, if I summarize it quickly, the two concepts side by side. The work hard, yes, you make more money short term. You have to sacrifice something, and it's predictable. It's something we all know. It's a known way of working. It's a known way of doing. And this, by the study hard, you have higher income long term on the other side, and it's less boring. But the work hard has some downsides, which is you have less income long term. You have a risk of being replaced. This is a serious risk. We are in a very golden situation right now, in the golden area of Salesforce, the golden age of Salesforce. Replacement is really low right now, but it might happen in the future. And this also, it might become boring. At some point after 10 years, adopting another email template, it might not be for you. But work hard, it's nice and predictable. On the other side, study hard, it's harder to get a job every time. And Maurizio can probably agree there. Finding a part-time job is harder, so you have the risk of being unemployed for short term. You have to be open to search for a job longer. You have less income in the short term, and it's an unknown way. It's challenging, but lucrative. And this brings me over to Maurizio. What do you tell people how to do part-time?
Yeah, and I think the beauty of this whole presentation really is like we're looking at almost two complete opposite ends of the spectrum, right? The traditional way where you're working 100%, right, and not doing too much studying, where does that take you? The fact that we have a living example like Johann, who's taken it almost the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where he's been able to take all of this time to focus on studying and things like this, it kind of gives a bit of life to what could have been a theory, putting into practice at the end of the day. So looking into, off of what we've sort of discussed previously on what worked for you, look, to some degree, being able to take, say, a year off or reducing, your work by 12 hours a week may not be possible. And that's completely understandable. But the whole point is to just add more continued education in your space.
We cannot hear you anymore. Sorry.
You're going to be able to mix in that piece, right, where you can study and you can sort of balance things out between project and study experience. So being able to reduce your expenses in any way that you see possible, of course, at any point where you're going to be, say, having to take on less work, reducing the income that you have, right, whether you have a family to provide for, whether it's your own personal expenses that, you've been dealing with, kind of reevaluating how much can you afford, right, to reduce when it comes to that part-time. It may not be 12 hours. It could be 2. You don't know, but it's still 2 extra hours that you could take to start to do some study. Whatever you can look at affording, see where you could reduce some of those monthly, weekly expenses, whatever they may be, whether that's, not buying a big ticket item, or maybe even just not necessarily going to Starbucks or whatever coffee shop and getting that coffee every morning, whatever it may be to save. Look at that, evaluate it, and see what you could sacrifice as far as that time. The next part, I love this because I've been talking about it so much. I've been writing about it. Like I've been harping on this probably since I got into recruitment, to be fair. Finding a niche, right, that's in the right point in the demand peak is what's going to allow you to always have an option, right, of where to go to get work, whether it's part-time or not. Right? If you're in a place where there's a ton of people who are willing to put in 40 hours a week and you're competing against them and you're trying to get, even 30 hours as an example, and this company needs more, you're always going to come in second. Even if you're that much of a better worker, at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, you're competing with too many people to get that job, right? If you can find yourself a specialized niche, whether it's a technology within Salesforce, whether it's an industry, as an example, that needs specifically your services within technology, right? Whether it's, for example, marketing cloud within a given industry, whether it's, we can use CPQ as another example, very industry focused type of technology within Salesforce, right? These types of areas, if you can be a specialist in those, when you're looking at reducing your working time, there's going to still be options for you, because these are places where there aren't enough talent on the market in general to get somebody full time, right? So if all they have, right, is somebody like you who's an expert in what you do, you're probably still a decent contender, right, to win that contract as an example, or to keep you on perm. But reducing your hours just because you're in there's a gap, right, in the skills available and what's needed. So that's huge. Being a good communicator and being flexible, I think, go hand in hand. When you're in a position, again, whether it's contract or perm, and you're not going to be working full hours, the standard, say 40 hours a week as an example, you have to be at another level compared to everybody who's going to work that standard, right? When it comes to being able to communicate, whether it's expectations, whether it's risks that could happen in the project, whatever they may be, being as proactive as you can with that communication, right? And being as flexible as you can, whether maybe this week, yeah, you're going to work a couple of days, next week, big deployment, you got to go in for the full week, the week after that, you shorten it again. Being able to be a professional or being able to be this way is going to show you're the professional that you are. And the company's going to realize, again, I'm not harping on the fact that everyone's got to work 40 hours a week. You're a true professional in what you do. Most of the time, you can actually get done what needs to happen in 1 week in a lot less time than 5 days and 40 hours. But this needs to be proven, especially to companies that aren't used to this. And that's where this communication and flexibility comes in. You really have to come off as that much more of a professional than everyone else that they've seen do similar jobs or the same job as you in the past. What do you think, Johann?
I agree 100%. You speak the truth there. You have to prove that part-time can work, and it's possible. And once you achieve that, and I like how you put it, that this is a continuum. I did the one extreme of working as little as possible. It might be different for you. I like your approach. Many people I know who don't discuss any more pay raises, but they actually discuss now every time they would get a raise, they just reduce their working time. So they reduce it hour by hour, year over year, and slowly reduce it this way. This makes it easier for you and your boss. And so there is many different options, and this is today an opinion piece, a thought process, whatever works for you, try to make it happen. And like Maurizio said, maybe, for me personally, having Monday off is more valuable than doing a second vacation each year. But this is a personal decision. Make your own decisions there.
One thing we actually missed there that I wanna mention too is, like, yeah, it's great if you can manage this, and whether, again, you're going to take a chunk off at once, your management is okay with that, or whoever's paying your invoices is cool with that, or you're doing it slowly, right, reducing hours gradually. Either way, the other side of this, that all that extra time you have, remember, it's not just necessarily, in the context we're speaking, this isn't necessarily just like free fun time where it's like, oh, I get all this vacation all the time. Like, the whole point of doing this is to basically, it's almost like crash course, right, in what you would have done in education and certifications over 10 years. We're now squeezing this into a much smaller amount of time to get the exponential increase in where you can get to in your career at an earlier point. that's the whole concept of what Johann did. It's not just like for more longevity now and yeah, you know, like you get to sort of enjoy this and that. It's still super hard in what he's doing, right? All the studying that he did was very structured, right? Throughout his weeks, he had to manage his time in that regard. You can talk more about that for sure. But from the beginning, knowing, okay, I'm going to reduce my time by this much, blocking time to actually do that study, to say, I'm going to have my certification done at X point because of X amount of hours that you've done, being able to break that down, setting the goals is super important to maximize on this, right?
This is a good point. Maybe this brings me over to actually how, let's assume you got this all now done. How do you go about it? And I agree with Maurizio. Studying for me is like my job. I get up in the morning, I sit in front of the PC the same time I would do in the office. I have a project plan. I have a study plan. I do my calculations. I book my hours so I know how long which certifications take. I have meetings. It's kind of my job. As for my partner, there's no difference if I have a work day or a study day. It's exactly the same. The difference is I do a little bit more sport and more, let's say, movement on my study days, but because I think when I study, I need more, my body needs more alternatives. But that's it. Like he says, it's a job. Don't just slack. But I know you. Most of us are Salesforce nerds. Studying is our hobby anyway. If I give you 8 hours, what are you gonna do? Yes, the first couple of weeks you're gonna sleep in and sleep all day, but soon you're gonna get bored. You go on trailhead and you do it anyway. I know you. So if you go down this route, there is something, flexibility also means you might have to choose a different company. It's a niche can also be you work for the company nobody else wants to work for. This might be a small to medium end customer or consultancy. So this is what I did. I've worked for the first year 1 to 3. We have been a super small Salesforce team with a couple of hundred users at the end of the world in Berlin. Also end of the world, small startup. A small Salesforce team with 5 to 15 professionals is more than enough. And each year you do 4 certs. This is where Maurizio comes in play. You do your certs, you do your trails. So you get up in the morning and you study and study and study. Have a project plan, have something ahead of you. So I can tell you each cert takes me between 40 and 100 hours because I did a math on it. It's your job now. And so what happens after 3 years? You have 12 certs. You know how much 12 certifications is in terms of money, in terms of what contracts Maurizio can bring you? 12 certs. You're the top 10% of Salesforce professionals. Something around. Is this correct, Maurizio?
I mean, it depends on the market you're in at the end of the day, but 12, once you get into the double digits, I would say at this point in Germany, at least, you're in a place where I've seen people get significant raises. Again, it depends on the company, but I've literally seen people go from like, 50K to almost 80K just simply because of that with not much experience. It's a bit of an anomaly in some cases, but again, spectrum, right? This is an example of what I've seen. It does hold weight.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
And for the first 1 or 2 years, all the training you do doesn't show that much, but soon enough, your team lead, your colleagues will notice that you studied more. And so you will rise through the ranks faster. What usually takes you 5 years of experience, this is how a colleague once said it. With studying enough, you can make 2 years experience into 5 years. You cannot make 0 experience into 5 years, but you can multiply your experience by studying. So after 3 years, you should be able to get something like a senior admin role or a consultant role, a senior consultant role, or something even as a junior solution architect, which, let's be honest, 3 years of Salesforce experience usually doesn't happen unless you're really, really good. So you can raise way faster. But then there comes something after year 3, you kind of start to stagnate a little bit. As Maurizio said, you have to balance your experience with your knowledge. So this is, you now start to build your architect's foundations. If you want to go for the CTA, I don't say everybody has to go for the CTA, but if you want to do that. So the company, in my case, the company, I was lucky, stayed the same, but the company just grew. And this was a lucky break. Maybe you have to switch company now, but one job switch is kind of enough, I would say. So the company became a medium to large end customer or consultancy again. You don't have to work for PwC. It's great. No questioning there, but it's not mandatory. You need a bigger team now. You need more people around you. Either it's within your team and you do a lot of networking, like user group meetings, community, but you need something like 20, 25 people around you who give you feedback, who push you, who challenge you. Nobody does it alone. next one, you start now to get into the harder certification. So each of this of the architect certifications takes me at least 100 hours. So you do maybe 3 certs a year, and you start to do a lot less trails because also they become harder. So maybe 50 a year. And on top of that, you have to start something which a lot of us are uncomfortable with, but which I find very helpful. This is networking. And maybe Maurizio, you can help me on networking here.
Yeah, 100%. You could be the best at what you do. If no one knows who you are, it's going to be really hard to, and this is not just Salesforce, this is in any field at the end of the day, right? The networking piece to doing this is important for a few reasons. Number one is, yeah, people need to know your name. They need to know what you're working on. They need to know what you're doing so that you're almost like a household name, right? Like I'm not like pumping your tires here, Johann, as we'd say in North America, but as an example, right? You're someone who is quite well known, not just now in Germany, but even globally. Like I talk to some people in other markets in the States and Canada, whatever, and there are people who know who you are, but that's because you've done a lot of networking to get to the position that you're in, right? The fact that people know who you are, even just hearing your name a little bit, and they're associated to, okay, this guy got a CTA quite quickly, right? He's working on this, he's working on that, he's posting about this, and it's all relevant to things that they're also doing, things that they want to hear about. You're now somebody that down the road in a few years, you keep doing what you're doing, right? You could be getting contracts from who knows where in the world. Like where you look at where we're going, right? How it's when it comes to IT and the jobs that you can get as a freelancer, they can literally come from anywhere. It's not like before where it's like, yeah, we can have a remote contractor, but they got to live in the city. It's not necessarily like that. And especially not like this when it comes to Salesforce. The fact that you can keep this network chain going in that direction, you'll be able to get work from anywhere, from the comfort of your own home, whether you want to travel or not. That's one important piece of it. The second piece is like, it's also learning, right? Putting yourself out there, right? In what you think or your thoughts about whether it's this platform or something new that you kind of came up with on your own, you want to throw it out and get other people's ideas, whether they're going to be agreeing with you or they're going to be tearing it down, looking at that as a learning experience on its own where people may challenge you. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because nobody wants to be like feel embarrassed or anything like that. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it and the less you care. And you'll be looking at that stuff like, oh, you know what? Like this person's right. Or this person is a moron. Like they don't, you know what I mean? I don't need to listen to what this person is saying about me because they're, just saying maybe something rude, whatever it is. Right. That's also super important. You know what I mean? Because you learn a lot that way. So it's twofold, but yeah.
I agree there. And networking is also work. It takes time and it takes effort. This is nothing which happens
But
by
it's got to be
itself.
authentic too, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like you don't just want to post. We were talking about this before, right? Like there are so many posts about like, 10 things to do before you get, this certification, or there are certain things that it's like it's almost written about too much on so many different platforms that it's like, yeah, the information is readily available, but it's like no one really reads a lot of this stuff. A lot of people, when they look at content, in my opinion, especially from what I see in the Salesforce ecosystem, stuff that really takes off are things that like are authentic. Like you're working on this, like Johann, when you post some of the documents that you put up, like these cheat sheets and things like that, right? To help people, right, get to the point where you got to, but it's not just something that you copy and pasted or something that's very generic with nothing actionable. It's like people can get serious value out of reading things like this. You know what I mean? That's just an example, but it's true, authentic work that you're proud of, that you want to put out there, or true, authentic opinions about something new, about an event, whatever it may be, something you're passionate about. Put your true self, and the rest will take care at the end of the day, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And coming back to the Salesforce network, this is only one of the results. So after 5 years, you can have 18 certifications. Imagine how many people out there have 18 certifications. And remember, you're still working in a medium-sized end customer with no management responsibilities in part-time. And you got 18 certifications and 400 trails. This is an amazing result. You can be so proud of yourself. Maurizio can't bring you the contracts fast enough. You can't sign them as fast as you get the offers. Yeah, I mean, who else has? You even are in danger of being overqualified for some jobs.
Yeah, it's quite true. And the thing is, too, I wanna actually note this if I can, if we have the time. But when you look at there's going to be a lot of people who will respond to this and say like, oh, like, I've gotten X amount of jobs without any certs. I don't plan to get any certs. It's like, okay, like we're at a point now in the ecosystem where things are changing quite a bit. If you go back a few years, you could get a contract, especially in Germany, for example, no certs, barely any experience, and a little bit of CRM knowledge here and there, and you can probably still get a contract paying a good amount of money. At the point we're at now, where the level is raised and the bar has been raised, you do need to stay current with what's happening. And just because somebody is 2 years in, 3 years in, 4 years in, they have 18 certs, it doesn't mean they're going to know everything. They're still going to be quite green in a lot of areas, but the difference in going through year 4 and 5 and the project experience at that point with 18 certs, as opposed to going through the exact same thing at the same time in your career with 3 or 4, what you'll be able to take from those learnings is much different, because there is some theory that you've sort of gained behind it, and you're looking at that project from a different perspective, right? To me, that's actually what accelerates you at the end of the day.
You multiply your experience.
Yeah, exactly what you said.
You run into the low row lock error, and then yes, you can find the solution without doing the cert. But if you did the cert on data architecture, you know, oh, this is happening because, and I have the following 3 options how to solve it. Yes, you can also Google that and you find the same solution within a couple of hours. But do you make this connection now? That, oh, our database architecture actually should have been different and blah. So I 100% agree there. The second thing is, you have all the certs now, which multiply your experience, which multiply everything. You have a Salesforce network to rely on. I like add a third thing to the networking is, most of my personal networking is actually not public, but having one-on-one calls with people. And today I did a call with somebody who had maybe half a year of experience in Salesforce, and I still learned something. It's always giving. I learned how.
That's a good attitude, though.
You always learn something. It's not that you have to talk to people who are above you or below you or on the same level. Whoever comes up, okay, I asked this person, how do you work? What is your company? What is your culture? I learned so much about how they are organized. What's your thoughts on the industry? One of the best experts in our industry have maybe 2 or 3 years experience. They look at it with a fresh eye. But coming back, you will need, for the next thing I talk, you need a Salesforce network. Not you can rely on too much yet, but which you can build on. A network doesn't happen overnight, and it's something you build, and it takes time and effort. It takes years. You cannot force a network. You have to build trust. So after 5 years, you now are in a really nice position. You can be something like a solution architect, my personal favorite position, technical product owner, which is somewhere between architect and product developer and admin, or a delivery manager, which I see more and more companies having. You could, in theory, also do something like a team lead, because you have all these qualifications now, if this is your stick. So you have a lot of possibilities now there. Even if you don't go for the CTA right now, you are in an amazing position after this journey where you basically can choose your jobs. Every company, if you have 18 certs, 5 years of experience, 400 trails, a decent network, you can pick your job. Is this true, Maurizio?
Yeah, and it's the conversation is different, man. Like, people in Salesforce, they know, like, they get reached out to so much. Like, a lot of you probably feel like you can pick your job already at the end of the day. But when you look at what's being sent to you, it's probably just like everything and anything that has Salesforce tagged in a job description, maybe, right? Depending on what it is. When you're at this level, I mean, you're probably still going to get a lot of that. I mean, I'm sorry to say it's the reality, unfortunately, in some cases. But yeah, man, the conversations you're going to have with people who are actually going to bring you something valuable are going to be so much different, being where you're at, right? You would have gotten much more out of a career at that point than otherwise.
Your income between year 1 and year 5, if you talk numbers, increased it doubled in 5 years.
And this is what happened to you, right? Like,
yeah,
literally.
Literally. Also, this is your income doubles. It's really weird, not really weird, but the income increases so much faster that it's already worth it just to go for this. But now comes the icing on the cake. I mean, we all know there are 300 CTAs out there, 300 something. And most of them are super geniuses, super smart. I'm not one of them. I basically cheated my way to the CTA in the sense of, all I did is I studied really hard. I call it the brute force method of getting a CTA. I know I didn't have the experience. I never worked for PwC. I never was a CTO. I never actually worked for a big enterprise architecture. So I had to study more. So year 6 is, I took off the whole year as Maurizio said, I reduced my expenses to the bare minimum. I still live very comfortable. But I reduced my expenses. I mean, I did a lot of networking. This also goes hand in hand. Like I learned a lot. I met a lot of people. I put out a lot of content, and I got one certification. This is the CTA. This is what I worked for this year. Because now I have a strong Salesforce network. Don't underestimate this. The CTA alone would not get me a CTA job. It's even, but I have also the CTA, and as I wrote it here, the sky's the limit. It's kind of not true. I noticed that I still have to learn so much. There's a couple of books on my list. There's so many trails, so much to learn. But this journey, it was so rewarding for me. It was so fun. It was so great. So this is what we wanted to talk about today. You can work less and achieve more. And I talked to a CTO the other day, last week. He told me, I discussed this presentation. He told me he thinks this is actually the future of our industry. That this working hard, if you work 40 hours and Salesforce brings out 1,000 pages of release notes, how are you going to keep up with that? There's no way of achieving that. And with this, I want to conclude from my side. Maurizio, something you want to add from your professional experience?
No, I mean, your last slide actually kind of, it's something kind of hit me, and you just kind of said it now as well with when you spoke with that CTO. Like, yeah, I mean, you did it the traditional way, right? Where you call it brute force, whatever you want. But in a way, do you think going in, say, more green than somebody who would have been, I don't know, a program architect for X amount of years before they went for their CTA? Do you actually think it may have simplified things a little bit for you because you're going so much by Salesforce best practice? That's what you kind of stuck to, and that's what you kind of ingrained into your mind as, this is my approach? Do you think in a way you actually simplified it?
I had to spend more study time. Absolutely.
No doubt.
No doubt. As I almost doubled it. I think I studied more, like 600 or 800 hours more than somebody who had like this 5 years of program architect experience. I had the one advantage that it's harder for somebody who has a lot of experience to actually step back, like you say, and start to read again about these best practices.
Yeah.
And some of them are overconfident because everybody tells them you have it, you know what to do. And then some of them actually fail because, like, it's after all, it's a test. It's not the exact same as reality. So you have to study for the test. And so it might have been easier in some way, also harder in another way.
That is super interesting, to be honest. But no, from my side, I mean, like we said, this is a case example of two different extremes, right? Take with it what you will, but the whole point is just don't forget the fact that you're in an ecosystem where continued study is super key, just as important as experience. And if you want to get to where you want to be as quick as possible, which is, hey, in today's day and age, how a lot of people are, and it's just the reality, start to play with how your day is structured, right? Have the conversations with your managers. I mean, they're not easy conversations to have. If you have questions about how you can maybe bring this up, reach out to Johann. He's probably no better a guy to talk to about things like this. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have that chat. And it really, really interesting work, dude. Super honored to be a part of this, man. Thank you.
Thanks for your help. Maybe something to add there. Be creative. Okay. Ask your team lead, can I take off a week unpaid vacation during Christmas time to study? Almost nobody says no to that. Ask them, be creative with what you can come up with. Offer, you will work this week, the weekend for the deployment, but next week you will take off Monday, Tuesday, and then take this Monday, Tuesday to study. As always, be creative and find a way with your manager. I'm sure almost no manager says no to somebody studying in their free time. They're always happy,
especially in this game, right? But yeah, if there are any questions about this, like reach out to us, let us know. If there's a lot, Johann, maybe we could even do some kind of live session and answer questions like as we go. Depends on the response, but reach out to us, guys. Let us know. We're here to help you out.
So thanks a lot for having us. This was very close to both of our hearts. We have been talking about this presentation for almost a year now. Finally, we got it out. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. Have a good time. See you soon.
Ciao.
Ciao.